Today, I want to talk once again about the USS San Diego, Tier 7 premium American cruiser that, when it was first released, I thought it was pretty mediocre, maybe even bad, but now, in this most recent update, it's gotten a pretty significant buff. And I'll put a little screenshot of the changes up on the screen so you can see what we're working with. But to make a long story short, the San Diego's HP was buffed from 27,900 to 33,500, and consequently, the HP distribution amongst the various parts of the ship was also changed. But overall, it's a pretty nice survivability buff. And then the damage for the sap shells on the main battery was increased from a maximum of 1,800 to 2,300. Although at the same time, the reload on the main battery was nerfed by half a second, but the duration for the main battery reload booster consumable was buffed by 1 second to account for this. And this really isn't that big of a change to this ship, but the extra damage from the sap shells, I think, makes all the difference. I think the ship is actually in a pretty good state now, although this is never really going to be a high damage dealing cruiser like something that would fire, for example, high explosive. Because if you're taking out something like, say, the Atlanta, with which this ship is based on, then you're going to be shooting HE a lot. And of course, that HE might penetrate the superstructures for damage and deal a little bit of damage that way, but it's also going to start fires, which deal damage over time. That's not available to you on the San Diego. All the damage you do is going to come exclusively from either sap or armor-piercing penetration. There is no damage over time. And this sap, you can see, it is doing a hefty amount of damage even to this anchorage as we hit him. We're only going to land a couple salvos on him, so a handful of shells, and right away we do 10,000 damage to the anchorage. This is nice, of course, and we've got an Alabama to deal with as well. We're going to spend quite a bit of time farming the Alabama from behind the safety of this island. It's actually a long-time viewer of this channel who I think has his own YouTube channel. I'm not sure if he's still covering Legends. I know he was playing for a while, but it's BeastX, and there he is in his Alabama. We're going to sit here, and we're going to farm him thanks to the spotting from our destroyer. We might have been able to assist our destroyer as well, but it looks like he's taken out the enemy with a well-placed torpedo salvo. And it does look like Beast is probably going to take a torpedo himself, although we can't follow that up with a fire or anything if he does. And it looks like he does eat one torp, which removes some of his hit points. So we're going to try to shave away the rest of those hit points with these sap shells. And well, there still is a problem with SAP, which is that these 127mm guns on the San Diego, they don't have a lot of pen. They can obviously pen the superstructure of this particular battleship, and they could pen the armor scheme of the anchorage. But what'll happen is if we continue to land shells on Beast, where the shells will pen, we'll probably see the damage start to fall off due to saturation, and that still is a problem. If it turns out that all you can do is pen battleship superstructure with these shells, then there's going to be a limit to their efficacy. Once you start hitting that saturation limit, you'll see the damage numbers decrease as you continue to land shells, and overall the damage is just going to seem mediocre. But BeastX himself, I mean, we started this engagement with 10,000 damage done against his division mate in the anchorage. He's well on his way back to port in his Alabama. Our teammates are now starting to shoot at him, so he's probably not going to be floating for too much longer. But we've managed to go from 10,000 damage to 45,000 damage just by shooting Beast. So that's 30k that we've done to his Alabama just with the sap pens into his superstructure and the like. Not an insignificant amount of damage, and we're approaching 50k quite quickly now. Although it looks like the torpedoes are what is going to finish off Beast. Oh, no, I lied. It was the fire set by the Hipper. That leaves his division mates in the mines, and the anchorage left alive on this flank. But the enemy team has captured both Alpha and Charlie, so we're going to start heading that way because we do have a battleship here that should dissuade those two cruisers from pushing in, and basically our work here is done. Now that the San Diego has been buffed, I think we should talk about how I think it's best played. And basically, this thing doesn't have a lot of utility in the sense it doesn't have a radar, but it does have a sonar consumable, so it can give advanced warning to both itself and its teammates of incoming enemy torpedoes. And of course, it's got these SAP main battery guns with the reload booster. The reload booster, of course, will cut down the reload time by half and massively increase the DPM. I think we'll be able to use it a little later on. We did there against the Edinburgh, but it didn't turn out to be that worthwhile because he went down so quickly. Our goal right now, since Charlie is taken, is to go and support our teammates around Bravo and Alpha. And specifically, what we're looking for is the enemy destroyer. So my plan, because I've played a couple games in this ship after the buff, is look for the blue team's destroyer, follow that destroyer, and try to support it. And then when that destroyer finds the enemy destroyers, you're right there with your crazy SAP DPM, and you can just obliterate them. We are going to end up catching the enemy destroyer at one point, so you'll see just how effective these shells can be against enemy destroyers. Debating on if we want to shoot at the anchorage again. I think we're going to do that as we go behind the island here because we should go dark, so just a little bit of a pot shot. But our goal is to follow our friendly DD and try to support him if he's going to try to take Bravo. Hopefully, if he spots the other enemy destroyer, we can shoot him. And so I think as a support vessel, this cruiser is actually quite good. I wasn't too hot on it when it was first released, and the buff I don't think is going to do much to change anybody's mind about whether they think this ship is really good or not. I suspect a lot of people, even after this buff, will probably look at this thing and think it's just as mediocre as it was prior to the buff. And honestly, that's a fair assessment. I don't think the buff has made, let's say, a night and day difference, but the extra damage from the SAP helps where it counts, which is shooting against destroyers. And I would almost consider the San Diego to be a good cruiser in kind of the same way that the Tiger 59 at Tier 6 is a good cruiser. And I know as soon as you say that, a lot of people are going to immediately come back with, well, the Tiger 59 sucks. And yes, it does in every sense except one. Tiger 59, of course, has much fewer guns than the San Diego, and those guns only shoot the British light cruiser armor piercing, which is excellent because it's short-fused and has improved penetration angles and deals a crap ton of damage to destroyers. But the Tiger 59 only has 4 of those guns. What it also has, though, is good stealth, much like the San Diego, which also has fairly good stealth. And the Tiger 59 has radar and sonar. Now, the San Diego does not have radar, so it's not capable of spotting destroyers the same way the Tiger 59 is. But when the destroyer is spotted, the San Diego, I would say, is even more effective than the Tiger 59 at dealing damage to destroyers. And so that's why it's sort of been my game plan, to observe what is the Blue DD doing, then ideally follow the Blue DD and try to support it as it enters a cap or as it spots another destroyer. And if you put yourself in a position like that and you get eyes on the enemy destroyer, you can shred them quickly. It takes about maybe 3-4 salvos with the main battery reload booster going, and boom, the destroyer is dead. Oftentimes, that's all you need in order to carry or win a game. In fact, by the time this match is over, we're not going to have an impressive amount of damage done by any means. We're only going to end with somewhere in the vicinity of 90,000 damage. But we are going to finish with high XP, and that's going to be thanks in part to one of the destroyers we're able to take down, and also one of the caps we're able to flip. At this point, there's only 3 people left alive on the red team. Beast X's 2 division mates and the 2 cruisers, Anchorage, and I can't remember what the other one is, and the final enemy destroyer. But the enemy has taken all 3 of the caps thus far, We've got our last remaining destroyer teammate in the Alpha cap taking that completely uncontested, so he should be able to flip it no problem. Meanwhile, we're going to head into Bravo and attempt to take that. And of course, as soon as we enter the Bravo cap, we get spotted by the enemy destroyer, no doubt. So we're going to be very careful here as we enter the Bravo cap and take it. And it's vital that we do take it because you can see the point situation is quite close. It's 540 to 516 or 519 in the blue team's favor, but that won't last so long as the enemy is allowed to continue accruing points from more caps than we hold. Now we flipped Alpha, we're going to flip Bravo, and the mines and the anchorage are still hanging around the Charlie cap somewhere over there. We've got a cruiser approaching them, and I've got 2 battleships coming in behind me. So what we're going to do is just park here, maybe try to get some shots on the mines as we take this cap, and then our goal is going to become hunting down the enemy destroyer and sinking it. I don't think the enemy really has a snowball's chance in hell of winning this battle, but all of their chances probably rest in that destroyer staying alive. And now the cap is contested. There's a red inside of it, and we're suspecting that that is most likely the enemy destroyer. So we're waiting for our sonar to come off cooldown, and then we're going to pull forward. We can see the RPF indicator pointing off, toward the island that's right next to us. So we suspect that the destroyer is somewhere around there. We're checking our teammates' HP, advising the battleships to get back. There's no reason for them to push in. All we need to do to win this game is simply sink this destroyer, and there's no way the 2 remaining cruisers can push into these caps and take them as long as our battleships are still alive. So we were right. The destroyer was in the cap. He launches torpedoes at the friendly turpits and misses, which is good. And he's smoked up. He has left the cap. We've been able to flip it. So we're going to exit the cap around this island here. We don't want to go straight forward because I'm not quite sure about the position of the enemy anchorage. And if we go through that gap, it's possible we run into that anchorage and he's just able to wreck us. This is, after all, a light cruiser, and it's possible that the bow and stern can be overmatched by the likes of heavier cruisers. I'm not actually sure what the bow and stern armor are, but we don't want to be fighting with an anchorage, which has super heavy American AP and can probably access our citadel no matter how angled we are. Tarigo demonstrates exactly the reason why we didn't want to push out of the cap that way, because he does get caught by the anchorage, and he starts getting pummeled by his main guns. We're coming around the cap the other way. We saw the Jervis was coming in this direction as well. And when we come around this corner, we should be able to spot him and hopefully get some shells on target. We do spot him. The salvo is out. And here we get an example of just how effective this sap can be against destroyers. That's 1 salvo, 2 salvos, and 3 should mark the end of the Jervis. There he goes. The game is won. The enemy team really doesn't have any shot at winning now, so all that's left to do is not sink, and, well, that's easier said than done when we've got battleships on no HP pushing into enemy cruisers that they don't need to push into. So we're going to try to go forward a little bit, maybe find a position where we can farm the remaining enemy cruisers to pad our damage numbers just a little bit, but this game is a victory. And you might be looking at this and thinking, well, it's kind of a blowout, and to some degree, yes, it is. But I do have a couple other games in the San Diego that are much like this. Not very high damage, but games where I was able to sink 1 or more destroyers playing in tandem with my destroyer teammates. And so that is what I think the role of this ship really is. It's a very effective destroyer killer. And much like the Tiger 59 at Tier 6, which is also a very effective destroyer killer, sometimes that's all you need to win a game. So this ship can be pretty good if you're well aware of your teammates' positioning and you're willing to support your random destroyer teammates, as I am when I play solo. But I think probably this ship will shine a lot better if it's in a division, where maybe you've got a destroyer that can smoke you up near a cap as he enters the cap, He finds the enemy destroyer. You're right in front of it, concealed within the smoke screen. You're able to help him take it out. And sometimes that is all you need. All you need to do is clear out the red team's destroyers, and then the victory just falls into place because the red team suddenly has no eyes and no ears. So San Diego, very good at dealing damage to destroyers. The SAP can even deal pretty significant damage to cruisers and battleships as well, as we've seen here. But this really isn't about pumping out a whole lot of DPM. It's much more of a precision ship that I think is finely tuned to beat the crap out of enemy destroyers, and that's how I would play it. You see, we get pretty good XP at the end of proceedings here with 2700 base, and we win the game. So San Diego, after the buff, may be worth checking out again if you own the ship and haven't played it since release. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.